So today's program is about classroom strategies, dealing with disruptive behavior, difficult behavior. It could be loud or it could be soft. It could be scary or it could be subtle. It's something that happens over a few weeks. And so they're going to start us off and cover everything. And if you have questions, please ask them. So let me introduce who's here. We have from the CPC High Point Schools, Cheryl Mountain in the middle is the director of all of the schools. I don't know if you had a chance to look at their website. I did send it to all of you, but their schools range from K through 12, and they're going to tell you more about that. The interesting part for me is that the ages go from 5 to 21. So that's where we come in and can certainly relate a little bit more than maybe the 5-year-olds. Anyway, so that's Cheryl. Rose Tarantino is the principal of just one school, Rose, or both? Okay, both schools. And then Ryan Hamer is the well, I'm going to say vice principal, but it's assistant principal, but you were also a teacher there as well. So they have managed a lot with High Point Schools, and I will let them go on. We'll do the best we can with the microphone, but thank you for coming here. We do have some more, and I'll go over what the other workshops are later with different speakers. But again, these very nice folks from CPC are here to help us. So here you go. Who would like the microphone first?
So good afternoon, everyone. Like Meg said, we are a special education school. We're located in Morganville. So our school runs from kindergarten through 12th grade. So what happens is when the public schools are having a difficult time managing the students due to learning, behavioral difficulties, mental health issues, they look for what's considered an out-of-district placement, which is our school. There are several schools like this throughout the state of New Jersey, but specifically in Monmouth County, we're known for taking those really tough and challenging students. 90% of all the students have a mental health diagnosis. We have a lot of services that we offer within our program, just to give you a little bit of insight. Students come to us who have depression, who have oppositional defiant disorder, bipolar disorder. So we are managing ADHD as the most common one, where we're dealing with those impulsive behaviors, the outburst in the classroom. We have a crisis intervention team in the program because our students are also very aggressive. So we feel your pain in regards to, sometimes just feeling overwhelmed, not knowing what to do, and we're hoping that we could provide a little insight. Although our setup is a little bit different because we have children and you guys are managing adults, it sounds like some of the things that you guys are dealing with in the classroom are pretty much the same. So in our program, we have 13 licensed clinical social workers, we have 3 psychiatrists on board, and we have a crisis intervention team. And we really need that much in order to make the program successful. So we can do what's called emergency safety physical interventions within our program. So we are a hands-on program because the children that we take display such extreme behaviors and can become aggressive. So safety is always our number one thing that we try to ensure for the students and the staff. My background, I've been in the education world for 14 years now, but by trade I'm a licensed clinical social worker and have switched over into the education world. So I am going to turn it over to, are you going to go first? To Ryan. But what we're going to do is we are going to just do a mini presentation just to give some strategies, and then we're going to turn it over to answer some of your questions. And, we're going to do our best to hopefully give you guys some insight and help you guys out. We won't spend too much time on this because I know everybody wants to put their questions out there. Sounds good? All right.
Well, good morning or good afternoon. I don't have a clock in here. But again, my name is Ryan Hamer. I'm assistant principal over at CPC. I taught in the public schools for 15 years in Paterson, New Jersey, as well as New Brunswick, New Jersey, and Charlotte, North Carolina for 8 years. All in definitely challenging population. But regardless of where you teach, it comes down to rapport, building that rapport with students, and just some takeaways when I was teaching. And even when we do, presentations or whatnot, you always want to, have enthusiasm. You want to be positive. Those are simple things that you can control. Listen, there's a lot of variables, and we'll talk about it. And Cheryl, Miss Mountain touched upon, when we de-escalate students, and we're going to try to show you some, verbal de-escalation because, you have your campus security, whatever your logistics you have when it becomes a safety concern. You always want to make sure that you're safe as well, and always know your surroundings. But simple things that you can do, like 3 quick takeaways, is you greet students by the door. And I don't know what you currently do. I don't know the setups. This is a lot more personalized, rooms like this. You know, when I was in college, you know, Generation X, I have my own reservation and my own memories of what college looked like. I mean, this is a little bit more informal, a little bit more personalized. It's not as overwhelming as those large lecture halls. And you want to try to, you know, you have the obviously the direct instruction, you have your lecture component, but you kind of, the trend is like with the blended learning and becoming facilitators and having students, you know, the new millennials, they're very active, and we'll talk about active learning as well. But some quick things you can do is, you know, I try to be by the door, is greet students by the door when they come in. You get a pulse of kind of the temperature of what they're coming in like. You can kind of read the body language of certain students. So I always greet students at the door. Even as, you know, administration, we're always visible. We're always present in the hallways. The other thing you want to do is, and again, we're in a college setting, but I used to play some classical music. I'm very big into music. Even instrumental music, of music that, you know, in today's world, you can play instrumental music in the background. And you have to gauge your classroom, because you don't want it to be a distraction, but the music kind of, you know, they kind of feel it, and it already kind of builds that connection. So I'm not saying blast Little Uzi, but you can play like the Beatles, you know, or something of that nature. And I usually use instrumental, jazz, or whatnot. And the other thing I love to do is people feed off your energy. And, you know, right now this is a good crowd for the most part. I'm sensing out a lot of English professors in here. I can sense that. And I also looked at the sheet, and there's a lot of English on there. But what I want you to do, and this buys me some time, and again, there's 2 trains of thought. There's the growth mindset, and then there's the innate ability. Are you guys familiar with Carol Dweck? Carol Dweck does a lot of research on the growth mindset, and we all have our philosophical mindsets. I do believe in growth mindset, but I also feel like we're all in this profession for the reason of really trying to help educate children and work with them. So I do feel like, yes, we have a growth mindset, but I do think that in all of us, it's innate. And I think that some of the stuff that we'll teach you, it does come from within. But I strongly recommend Carol Dweck for that growth mindset, because it does raise some things about kind of dealing with your own personality and teaching style. But that being said, while I just go through the slides real quick with our principal, Miss Rose Tarantino, I just want you to turn and talk to the person next to you. Say 3 positive things. First, it's positive. Second, it'll buy me some time while I set this up. So if you can turn and talk to the person next to you, that'd be great. And just give them some positive compliments or what you like about them. If you have 3, just count together. You like it. I know you're going to love it.
So I'll tell you my fixed parts of it. I definitely have a fixed mindset, especially when it comes to math. Like, I was trained, and I don't think my parents,
You know, she's not good in math. You have learning disabilities and different things that hold you back. But all right, thank you for that. Moving along, are you guys all familiar with each other in this room? Kind of, a little bit? All right. And that's another thing to look into, is just sharing. And that's what we had come up with as a staff. Because you guys work in a large, community college, which is a beautiful campus, by the way, a lot of times, we take for granted, what we do at CPC. We do a lot of collaboration. There's a high level of collegiality, our school climate, the day-to-day, but our school culture is just a culture that for the years to come is just an environment where there's active communication. If we're dealing with a challenging student, we have coping plans, we have behavior plans, we have conferences. It's almost endless. And I'm not just saying that because my director and principal are here, but we do that on a daily basis. I mean, communication we take for granted, and just even that little positive little interaction. Yes, it was great, to compliment someone. Everyone likes praise. Students love praise. You compliment little things. It goes a long way. Because you don't know what these students are coming into your classroom with, or what they had at home and the variables they have. You'd be amazed. And even in your own lives, what we all have going on and what we deal with. So it's like to walk in someone else's shoes, to have that empathy rather than just sympathy. So even that, amongst us in the room, and some of the concerns when we get to the Q&A, you might have a student that's presenting challenges in your classroom, whether they have Tourette syndrome or if they're just presenting challenges for attention or what have you. We're not even sure if you're dealing with the same student. So just having that collaboration and that shared time, I know it's busy and it's hard. What we do in our school, and we do it, we meet face to face. Nothing's better than face to face. But there's a thing, and I don't know if you're familiar with Padlet. Is anyone familiar with Padlet? Padlet, it used to be called Wall Wisher, but basically it's like a glorified Post-it. And I'm just going to show you how it works. In a perfect world, I'd have you, for the sake of time, you can even link it to your phones, or if you had Chromebooks or iPads, but it's Padlet. I linked it with my own username, so you can change it, but basically it's Padlet.com. I'm going to show you what it looks like, so and I'll share we'll share these slides with you. So if I clicked on it, if you had your Chromebooks, so I gave you guys Brookdale's Finest. I assumed you guys were good, so I gave you that nice little title. And here I put together, again, in high school and in school, we use, and I always get the name wrong with a P, and I butcher the name, and I'm sorry, English professors. My phonemic awareness, I struggled as a kid. Pedagogy. I hate that word. But basically how we teach. In college, it's called andragogy. And I know the English professors, thank you for not, I appreciate your sensitivity. But what I did was I linked on this, it's a shared thing, a shared site, where if we were all in this, if we were all collaborating right now, if you click on this little square here, we can share ideas. You can say, the presenter is kind of rambling right now, or I would like to answer a question about, what do we do with a student that constantly interrupts my lecture hall, or is constantly looking for attention, or is singing, or is getting up out of their seat. How do we handle that? And we can have a whole brainstorming session. So it's interactive, and you can actually use Padlet with students as well. I don't know the technology that you have with the students, but they can use it from their phones. You can collaborate with your colleagues as well. So we use this occasionally at times. But it's great. It's a quick access. It's glorified Post-it notes. I use it for myself just to keep me kind of on task as well. So it's Padlet.com. Ms. Rose, you want me to run through this slide real quick here? All right. Walk out of here. Whoops, that was not good. And how we handle adversity and keeping cool under pressure is very important. You always want to be cool, calm, and collected, even though you just shut down your presentation. Yep.
Okay. It might still be, you're still logged in.
Yeah.
So that's good.
All right.
You're almost there.
Good stuff. Thank you. All right. So moving along, that was Padlet. Got it. Don't hit the X anymore. We just went through some statistics, and we're not going to go over it in detail. We'll share these slides with you. But great beginnings, things to do early in your class. There's some handouts as you leave to definitely take away. But again, you always want to be prepared. And again, this is no reflection. I know you guys are professors at that level, but it goes a long way because the students will pick on it, up on it. And there's days we're all running ragged with our own home lives. But if you come into school or if you come into a college and half-fast it, the students kind of know that it's got to be relevant, it's got to be meaningful. They kind of know that you're kind of just going through the motions, at least on our level. So again, we stress with our teachers, we give them tons of planning time, tons of collaboration. Ms. Rose and I and Ms. Cheryl, we meet with our teachers weekly. They have supervision. Some, depending on their tenure or whatnot, some are twice a month. But our new staff, we have a mentor program as well. So we really try to emphasize that support. A lot of things we take for granted, that we think that everybody knows it or everyone's doing what we think they're doing. And again, I taught self-contained, BD, emotionally disabled, for many, many years, and I kind of was a lone wolf. So I didn't realize the resources that I had, and I kind of just had to use my own tools and resources on my own. But I realized you can't do it alone, and all of us in this room could attest, and we can't do it alone. So the best resources and the best intervention is the teacher. I know technology, I know there's different resources, but nothing will ever replace the actual teacher as the best intervention. So I have a handout here just that I actually pulled from Stanford College. I figured I'd go a little more Ivy League. So I did pull some stuff from their website and kind of gave you guys a little a handout to have at the end. Because again, more students are attending college ever than before. And, you know, we have to rethink kind of how we teach and kind of set the tone of our class. Best practices. Ms. Rose, did you want to take over?
The best part would that you greet them at the door. Keep an open mind of the students that you're meeting with and that you're going to be working with. The key component with all of the best practices is really going to boil down to the relationship that you have with the students that you're working with. That's also going to count on the level of trust that you have with that person and the level of confidence that you're going to have with working with each individual student that you have. No matter what the situation will be, it's going to always revert back to your level of comfortability and your relationship with the student. So there were just some best practices that we listed together. The next one is, you know, other considerations to just think about while you're in the classroom. You know, you don't know what happened the night before or even on the way to class. Maybe they had a fender bender on the way into the classroom. Maybe the students need to take even just a 5-minute break. I don't know how a lot of your classes are designed. I remember when I was in school, some of them were an hour and a half and some of them were up to 3 hours. Even as adults, our attention span, you're not going to be able to maintain that much longer than like a half hour, 45 minutes. So what you really want to do is offer opportunities for breaks in the classrooms. And sometimes, you know, just spending time doing some group assignments. So it's not just you focusing on all of the lecture. These kids are going to learn more by interacting and applying the practical skills to how it relates to their life. So a lot of the lecture doesn't always work with these students. You want to be able to do more teamwork and group work. Get them moving around the classroom, get them interacting.
The key takeaway is to kind of build equity with your students, because you might have a student that is presenting challenging behavior one day, and you might be able to de-escalate it by having that connection, with that emotional connection with that student. And again, it helps. And again, we all have our off days. But in the end, you know, having that connection could help you in the long run when things kind of do escalate. They kind of know they can trust you. And these are just, and again, I have another handout, and I just, to try to save, you know, going green, I did use double side, so it's not as bad. But we do have some presentation techniques you can use even with college students. You know, get them involved, even if it's something, you know, students love choice. You know, get them involved in body voting, utilize games. And, you know, again, we're at the middle school, high school level, you know, we use Kahoot. We use different interactive games. At the college level, you might want to have even, you know, basic 4 corners where you have, you know, challenging questions whether it's, you know, if you're in a novel-based study, or if you're in a class of getting a gauge of opinions in the class, of, you know, having 4 corners of, you know, are all millennials lazy? Or are all millennials different myths, and you can have them go to the corners and just to kind of find their answers. Little things like that, just to get the class moving. Even if it's basic recall of a novel, you can kind of make it a little bit more engaging or a little bit more advanced. You can do different things of movement in the classroom to get them kind of more involved. So these are just some different strategies that, you know, we have for you, and always you want to incorporate technology when you can. And each one of these is explained in the little handout just to have. Sure.
My question is, I love all of this,
Sure.
and I have done it in my class, but for students that are easily agitated, this type of voting seems to agitate them more. So, and even group work, that's going to produce anxiety for some students. And I know we were talking before, there's no black and white answer, and these are all suggestions. But what if something like this gets an agitated student more agitated, and
Right.
then they get more distracted, and it just becomes a hurricane that I just added more fuel to? I'm
Right.
mixing
and again,
metaphors.
You
But
know, I wouldn't suggest doing this right off the bat. You have to get a gauge of your classroom, get a climate of the classroom, who can handle what. And you always have to have, for every lesson that I have 3 other lessons back up. I know it's a little bit different on a college level perhaps, but I'm always prepared for that. So I know if the body, I'm going to switch gears very quickly, and I'm going to know, I'm going to assess it. And again, the thing is to maintain, I know it sounds simple, but proximity, reading the room, knowing, which students are on their cell phones underneath the table wearing a yellow shirt. You always have to know your room, and you always have to gauge and get a feel for that. So I wouldn't jump these activities right off the bat, but I would definitely get a sense of who can do what and empower those students as well. Maybe that one student that's off task, that student's going to run the group, and you use that student as a leader. And I don't want to give you kind of layman's simplistic answers, but sometimes simple, less is more. And you know what? I wouldn't, like I said, it's called task analysis. You just break it down. So, and again, and you want to keep it where some students are a little bit, even on a, and there's cultural differences too. So you really want to pay that all in mind. And before you do the
Again, with knowing your students, if there is a student that you are going to be doing an activity that may agitate them, you may want to let them know ahead of time that you're going to be doing that lesson and provide them with an alternate lesson so that they could still be involved and get a grade, but they don't necessarily have to be a part of that lesson. I've done that in the past. I know a lot of movement for some of my kids would cause a lot of anxiety, and working with somebody that they may not be comfortable with. So the day prior to that class, I would let them know, this is what I'm doing. If you're not comfortable, I have an alternate assignment for you. So that also frees that up. Now, one of the things, we know that the kids that we work with all have some type of disability. You don't necessarily have to know that. And unless the student actually confronts you and says, oh, by the way, I have a learning disability and I'm going through the program and this is what I need, you don't have to know. So a lot of this is a guessing game for you. And again, knowing your student and being able to read, I noticed that he's having a problem, a lot of English teachers. I noticed he's having a lot of problem with completing all the writing tasks. So you may want to talk to the counselors and get some ideas. You may want to use some different technology or have them do it orally, because a lot of kids can definitely express what they're saying, what they're thinking, and answer the questions, but going from mind to paper gets lost in translation.
If you know that that student is a disabled student, you do not want to give him a alternate assignment. Yeah. I don't know how this works. Just talk?
He just said to repeat what you said at the beginning about the
Okay. Alternate assignments, you want to be careful with that. If they have already disclosed that they're a disabled student, you don't necessarily want to give them an alternate assignment.
That just to clarify, that was for a classroom arrangement that they were doing as part of a lesson. So if it's going to increase anxiety, we definitely want to minimize any kind of anxiety.
Understand
for the
that,
student.
but then we might want to take a look at an assignment where that student can be included with the other kids.
Right,
'Cause
that's what-
if not, we're going to be talking discrimination, and that's not good. Yeah, very
yeah,
good.
it's differentiation on instruction.
Yeah, and again, different from maybe a high school level to a college level, because we don't necessarily have alternate assignments, alternate tests for them.
Okay.
Yep.
Some other programs do, so
It
that's
could also be the difference between a graded assignment and just a group activity.
And a
that's
group
not
activity.
That's different,
That's
yes.
Right.
I think she was just referring to an activity that might not be graded.
Okay.
And Christopher June is here also. He's our Director of Compliance
Hi.
and
How are
Conduct
you?
Code, and yeah, Chris. All that.
And again, with the differentiation, readworks.org, there's some great resources, and they kind of differentiate a lot of the reading material. So you could have a college level nonfiction piece, fiction piece, as well as a 7th grade piece. Same topic, it's just written on a different level. So readworks.org, I've used that a lot in the classroom as well. Also, getting back to the question earlier about when you do body voting and all that, you want to, you start off with like even icebreakers and do a lot of, again, you have, I don't know the sizes of your classes, but learning all the students' names, I think that's important regardless of the number. Just making that connection, it goes a long way. And I think just building that. I know you guys teach the masses. I don't know your class sizes, but in our school, again, learning the names, getting to know that goes a long way. So we have this handout for you. These are some other instructional strategies as well. Classroom accommodations. Again, creating and maintaining a culture of care, we've touched on this, but again, just letting students feeling safe and having that trusting environment. Be prepared, be honest, be creative with them. And then we threw this slide in here just also because we also have our own, implicit bias. Some of us do, some of us don't. But there is the generational learning that I thought might be appropriate because, again, we all come from different generations, and we definitely have, I know myself, my own, I guess, stereotypes or implicit bias. I've worked as a teacher with 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds out of college, and my own implicit bias, and you hear millennials are X, Y, and Z, they're lazy. Well, the millennials that at our school, they're our hardest working staff. They are punctual, they are on time, they are enthusiastic. So again, it goes back with our mindset, it goes back with our bias. There was a pretty funny video, which I'll share with you on the when I share the slides, about just the difference of a Generation X versus a millennial. So I thought that was something to share as well. Kind of on a different note, but when we shared these slides with you, it's kind of amusing. Situations, what to do or where to go, and that's where we can talk about. Yeah, we're going to open up to the Q&A.
Sorry. It depends on what your program provides. In high school, we could allow the one student. What I've done when I've subbed in colleges, I would let the whole class take a break, take a 5-minute break. This way you're not singling anybody out. But I would also let the other students know if they needed something additional, that they could just go to the back of the room and walk out the back way so as not to interrupt anybody.
Yeah, one of the problems I have two students. They may be a couple. I'm not 100% sure. But they come in late, half an hour late, and they leave an hour early. In other words, I have a 2 to 3-hour class. They're there maybe for an hour. Disrupting coming in and disrupting on the way out, because if I'm there either going through a lecture or going through an exercise or a test, they are interrupting the entire class. So I don't know how to deal with that. If I should deal with that directly into the class or take them aside and talk to them. Very hard sometimes, especially if they are around at the beginning of the class or the end of the class, to communicate with them, either than send them an email or set up an appointment.
So can I ask just so we can get a feel of what the classroom sizes are like?
24 students.
Okay, 24.
I would say English 16,
Okay.
and then some of the
So
lectures,
not-
how much the lectures, 30, 40 people,
Okay, all
40
right.
students?
Capped at 30.
There you go.
Okay. So, I think that you basically kind of answered it. There's a couple of different things you can do. It would be nice, we talked about establishing that rapport. If you could maybe speak to them aside separately, not together, I would just pull them out and just say, hey, listen, I just want to remind you that, it's really important for you to be here. Not confrontational. It's really important for you to be here. This is when class starts. When you're coming into the classroom late, it does disrupt the classroom. And, just kind of go over those rules. I don't know what the code of conduct or the policy or procedures are here, but you would really need to address them first. You can even do it via an email. Just send an email and say, hey, listen, because you're saying like sometimes they're coming in later in the class or they're leaving out early, so it's harder for you to kind of pull them aside. An email, if you wouldn't mind coming in a little bit earlier, sticking around at the end of class, I'd like to discuss something with you. But I think that initial step is really trying to address the issue first.
And also, go ahead, Ernest.
Esther, do you have anything in your syllabus that talks about showing up late and leaving early?
In the syllabus, the attendance.
Because I think that's always important, even before
It's
you
the
meet
first thing
them.
that I
You
review.
have those expectations.
It's the first thing I review at the beginning of the
So
semester.
they're clear.
Yeah.
I've had students who have had transportation issues, and I wouldn't have known that unless I talked to them. So it could be, look, I have a bus that I take all the way from Asbury Park. It gets here every time at 8:40. I know class starts at 8:30, but you wouldn't. So don't assume they're jerks. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I definitely. I go with the recommendation here, talk to the student, try to separate them. Maybe one student's going to say, well, he's my ride, and I can't get him to get here any earlier. Talk to him. So there might be more of the story. But yes, and Ernest is right. If it's just, I woke up late, then you got to say, well, you're missing material. I'm not going to help you catch up, and it's going to affect your grade. Or you may take points off. I remember Scott Ridley always took points off for students who came in late. So it's just a matter of what you're comfortable doing.
I wouldn't assume. We can't jump to conclusions and think that the kid is on drugs, or just like you said, you know, we don't know what these students' lives are like or what they're dealing with when they're walking into your classroom. They may be sleeping in their car. You're not 100% for sure everything that's, you know, going on. So the last thing you want to do is assume, okay?
Yeah. I'm also about a gentle approach. And again, this is going to be about the relationship that you have. Even if you just go over and kind of place your hand on their shoulder, see if they're okay.
Oh, careful about that one.
You can't do that?
No.
Okay. So, but I wouldn't, obviously I'm not going to call them, I wouldn't, you know, call them out in the classroom about it. I would go down to their level. You could definitely whisper in your classroom to your students and just say, are you okay? Is there anything that I can do for you? And I would talk to them again after class privately to see what was going on and see if there was anything that they need. I don't know what kind of support services that you provide here. Like Cheryl had said, maybe they're sleeping in their car and they're not sleeping. So I don't know what kind of services that can help with linking that up.
I'll share that with them again later because we've done that before. And I do have for counseling, the numbers up here, I have brochures. But if a student does require counseling, and you have to be careful about how you bring that up, but there's a phone number and they could set up a free confidential appointment. But you have to be delicate. You can't say, boy, you need help, right? You can't say that. But usually if you get to know the student, you build trust. They're going to say, you know what, I'm really having a bad day. I don't know what to do. Well, have you ever considered going to counseling? There's lots of students who do go to counseling. We have free counselors here. Would you like that phone number, or could I have one of the counselors call you? But they kind of have to say it first, right, Ernest? Yeah.
Once they know that you're coming from a caring perspective, though, it's going to be a much different tone with that student. Because they're not going to think that you're picking on them, or you're really inquiring because you're there because you care. And that makes a difference.
Hi, my name is Sylvina Mendez. I'm the Monmouth County Division of Social Services social worker that is here on campus 2 days a week, Monday and Thursday, in the psychological counseling department. And a lot of what Brookdale has been doing with the county is partnering to deal with food insecurities, housing insecurities. I don't have water, I don't have transportation. There's a lot of transportation issues. So sometimes it's something completely unrelated to whether or not they're using drugs or they just don't want to pay attention. They're hungry, they're tired. So I am always open to any referrals. I've been here since last September. I've gotten 60 students. A lot of it seems to be the same kind of thing. If you think they would benefit from talking to me, please give them my email. I do have a smendez@brookdalecc.edu email. My flyers are all over campus. If you have a question that you want to talk to me and say, what do you think is going on? What is available? I am a resource, but I'm not if you don't give me a call.
Can I just ask the audience a question? Do you guys know and have at your, I know this brochure, but do you know what resources you can utilize?
Some do, some don't.
You know,
I
so
could put it up on the website.
Yeah, I think that would also be a great idea, just to have like I don't know if something could be put together for not even just like you just gave out your email address so they know, just knowing what resources are available.
Here's where you go. So here's the Brookdale website, homepage, and then if you scroll down, it says we support all students. If you just click on this, find out more, this is where all of the services are, including the social workers, Lena. So everything's here. It looks a little different on the screen. There were some icons. I think they're working on it. But they've organized them by academic support, student support, and safety. So everything is here, and I believe we're also going to have a CPC representative on campus soon, twice a week. When you're not here, there's going to be, so hopefully every day we'll have some support services for students. Okay, anyway. More questions. Next one, student not completing submitting assignments. Does anyone want to elaborate on that? Or is that pretty much as it is? I don't know how to make this bigger.
And there's different ways to modify and adapt the lessons depending on what your program offers. But you're ultimately going to have to follow what the college procedures are as far as pass and fail in grades and acceptance of assignments or projects after due dates. That's really going to fall back on what your policies and procedures are.
I mean, we're going to get to the scary stuff in a minute, but there are more questions about assignments, handing in things late. How strict can you be?
To me, submitting assignments is a chronic problem. It's just, there is always 20%, 30% of the student population that will not do the homework. And no matter, the different things that I've tried, the only thing that has succeeded is just reserve time in the classroom and do the homework in the classroom altogether, which is, it doesn't provide that differentiation between the students that do work hard and the students that, decide not to do their homework. And I think it's a chronic problem for students just coming out of high school, that especially writing papers, that just they are not, encouraging them to find writing resources here on the campus and all that. We do that, but the papers are, not subpar, let's say, at this point.
The program sets as a standard of acceptable and not acceptable. I know when I was in school, if just at the attendance, if you were late 3 times, that was an absence. Don't even show up. And then if you didn't turn in your assignments, even if you had extended time, it may be a week or so, but once it wasn't turned in, then it was a 0. And if you didn't have a certain GPA, then you were put on probation. So, but that doesn't mean that that's everybody's standard. So I don't know, and I can't really speak to what your school policy is if somebody wants to.
Well, every department's different.
Okay.
Actually, in English, we do a lot of revision, and then they hand in the final paper. For a student that just hands in a paper, if you have a grading rubric that counts grammar as a very high percentage of that grade, and they fail that part, but they did great with everything else, they cited their sources and all that, but their grammar was horrible, you might want to say, you know what, for you, why don't you go to the writing center and work on this some more, and maybe and if your grammar improves, if you proofread this, then I'll consider raising your grade. That gives them the little nudge to revise, because if they've taken English classes here, they know it's revision. If it's a test, though, where it's a one-time deal, I'm not sure how much grammar would count for something like that.
On your syllabus, do you break down that homework is a certain percentage of their grade?
Yeah.
It took me 20 years to figure this out, because I teach a lot of students who come in right from high school, that for a lot of them, they could do 70% of the work in high school and still pass. And when we tell them in college that that's not true anymore, you have to do 100%, they won't believe us, because they're told repeatedly in high school that you have to hand it in and they still get away with it. So what I've tried, somebody else, clued me in on this, just give like an assignment in the beginning that carries like very low weight, and use that as an example, and kind of set the tone. So if they don't hand it in, it's 5 points. But it kind of lets them know that if you're not going to hand it in, you can hand it in later, and you'll just get a 0 on it. So I found that to be a little bit helpful. Yeah. And then if they did hand, it's only like 5. If you keep it the point in the beginning, you could also call the writing center and have them do an orientation for your class. They could either go to the writing center in the beginning of the semester and learn where it is, or you could have somebody come to your class.
We also have the Center for Reading and Learning Strategies. That has some instructional assistants that could run workshops in your class or for certain students. They'd be happy to set that up. I could give you all the numbers, and they're right in Larison Hall.
And just to add to the professor's comment too, that also builds the confidence also. Like even some students are, there's a lot of learned behavior. They've dealt with, failure in the past. So even that 5 points, if it's an easy task and they do it, it kind of sets the tone as you suggested, and it just kind of changes their mindset that they are capable. So you kind of build them up, and it helps their confidence, and it helps you. And I know, in colleges and even in school, we're big on the syllabus, but at the end of the day, a syllabus is just a piece of paper. And a lot of these students that are defiant they don't care about what's on the syllabus, or but when you have that, and you kind of answered your own question, you have that personal connection. You're providing yourself as a resource. You gave them access to different resources to help them with their homework. Sometimes, at the end of the day, we're all human. We do the best we can. We exhaust all our options. But at the end of the day, students are still, even in our school, they're held accountable. And at the end of the day, there are natural consequences, unfortunately, and we all kind of shy away from that sometimes. But if you extend yourself and you've known that you've given them every ounce of what you can, even going above and beyond. But the key is, even in this room, you guys are all resources towards each other, and that's the thing that we have as a school, because we don't have there is no magic formula for all of this. So I think that's very important, just to kind of keep it that, it is exhausting, our field. It really is. You come home each day, you're exhausted. You're like, should I go to the gym, or should I just watch Netflix? I'm just going to crash on the couch. We go through those challenges, but at the end of the day, you want to come to school and to college with a renewed enthusiasm every day, like it's your first time teaching. And the students do feed that. I know it sounds whatever, but the energy, they know. Students know at any level. I have older children too. They know when you're kind of just going through the motions, you don't care. And I feel like you having those connections with the students that are late, with the students that are not doing their assignments, and you show them, don't say, hey, look, on this syllabus right here, it's because you're not going to help, that's not going to help anything, because they know, they have access to the syllabus. They know that you give it out, every professor gives out that same syllabus. But if they know that you took the time out of your busy schedule to pull them aside and say, listen, you know what, I really want you to get credit for this course, but you come until late, you're not going to pass, you're just wasting your time. Having those kind of meaningful, relevant conversations, those crucial conversations go a long way. And you might want to get assistance, maybe not have that conversation alone, maybe have someone, around. Again, I don't know every dynamic. I don't know what grade or what subject you teach, so that all plays a factor into that. But definitely use each other as resources as well. Anyone else have a different question and answer?
We're not really sure what to do in that moment. Can we say, it's best for you to leave? Are we allowed to do that? I don't know.
I think in that point,
we might want Chris, but let's hear what Mike has to say, and I'll bring this over to Chris.
in that situation, and I know it's different because you guys, are dealing with adults, but if we had a student like that, and we have students like that every day, we try to get them outside of the classroom to limit the disruption, not kicking them out. But I don't know if you could say, at this time, guys, can you open your books and read whatever, and ask that student to step outside of the room briefly. You know what I mean? To try to gauge what's going on. Seems like you're having a really difficult time. How can I help you? You know what I mean? So if you can pull them out of the room in a non-confrontational, discreet way, I think that would be the best way. What we try to do in our program is move them out quickly and limit all the distractions to the other students, because like Meg said, you do have students who want to be there, they're paying customers, so we have to try to meet everyone's needs. And I do feel like you guys are definitely in a more difficult spot than we are, because the kids have to be there. Here, this is more of a voluntary thing. But in that situation, I would try to move that kid out of the room and see if you can talk to them.
Donna has a question, but I'm going to let Christopher June speak to that too, since he's our contact.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, absolutely. You can, anytime you find that a student's being disruptive, you can ask them to leave the room, and that's totally acceptable. It's something you'd probably want to follow up with me about, or, your dean or your department chair, whatever the case is, whatever comfort level you have. But yeah, if there's a student that you're finding that is being disruptive, you can again, not aggressively, de-escalate the situation. Maybe you want to say, hey, everybody, let's take a quick break, and then have a quick conversation with that person, ask them to leave or find out what's going on. But yeah, that's totally acceptable to do.
I just Googled on our website, I put in the search box incident reports, and there are two kinds. This is the one that's thankfully the most common one. It's just a concern report, someone who's having a bad day, someone you may have referred to counseling. That's student behavior. And then code of conduct is what I was just doing. I was being the jerk. You want to report that. Even if you handled the situation, it's good for the team to know that this student should be on their radar. So those are the two, and they're simple forms. And then at least Chris and Ernest know about that then. Sorry, Donna.
I'm not even sure what I was going to say anymore, but I wanted to piggyback on what Marcia was saying.
I feel like at this point, I'm at this meeting. I've been teaching for a long time. I'm very enthusiastic. But the thing that I think is challenging for many of us, which I don't sense you're dealing with because you have a school of, majority of the students are there because they have behavioral issues, correct? So one of the things that's very challenging for us, I think, is that we have classes where we have such a range of ability and commitment and interest, and you're talking about the 20% who never do their homework. I mean, at this point, I teach to the 80% who do. That's who I focus on. And but the thing I'm finding challenging this semester is I've got a student who's so disruptive that my usual group work and all of those creative things I like to do, I'm not sure it's fair to the other students to put them in a group with the student. So now I'm thinking, am I going to change the way I teach because I have to manage this person and not be unfair to the other students in the room who are not disruptive or who don't have some behavioral issue? So that's, for me, I'm here because it's very tricky being fair to the students who are not acting out, right? That's who I am currently most worried about.
Good question.
I mean, in regards to that student that's in a group that is not pulling their weight, I mean, I think one thing is, okay.
It's being disruptive. Yeah.
This should not be happening week after week after week. We have a behavior review team, and with documentation, then we can move on that. What we can't move on is hearsay. We need the documentation from faculty members. And the BR team meets every other week where we review all the different incidents. So that's very important. The other thing for faculty members, remember, you're not there to water down your standards. All students must meet your academic vigor and pass your class like everyone else legitimately. We provide access. We do not guarantee success. And that's one of the differences between, I think, a high school system and a college system. It's voluntary. It's access, not success. And you probably have been doing the best that you can, but now how do you incorporate this one student who doesn't want to comply? That's where we need other people to help you out.
So can I just ask, and also for like our understanding, if an incident report is written and you guys get that information, what's the process after that?
Usually we'll reach out to the person who submitted the incident report, because when a report comes in, unless they've explicitly said, sometimes like Dean Natter said, we're just getting a heads up. So my first course of action is to follow up with the person that submits it and determine what it is that we're looking to accomplish. Is this just something you wanted to get on my radar? Is this something that requires further intervention, whether that's informal, formal, whatever the case might be? It usually starts a conversation between me and who reports the incident to determine what we're looking for. And then on the back end, we keep track of it to determine, is this a student who has more than one issue in the semester, or they did this same thing the last 3 semesters in, an English class or something like that, so that we can then know, is this something that maybe we can act in more of a way where we're providing the student with information and resources, or is this something that's more of a disciplinary issue where we have to address it that way? So generally, my first course of action is to partner with the faculty or whomever's submitting the report to find out what it is that they want, and also discuss potentially limitations. There's not always going to be the opportunity to remove a student from the class, at least based on 1 or 2 incidents. So, we have to kind of understand also what our limitations in following the college's policies and the law are as well. But it usually it starts that conversation to figure out the next step.
So could I just ask one more question with that? Mm-hmm. So if the professor was to submit the conduct report,
Mm-hmm.
You said you meet like every 2 weeks or so. So that could be 6 classes already that have been, like, is there a flag in this system that says, okay, this student has 6 just from this class and then is in this class and is getting 3 more? Does that make the process?
I'll usually follow up with the individual before we meet. I try my best to follow up within a day or two. Okay. to see if this is something that, hey, can this wait to go to the team, or is this something that requires more immediate action? You know, Ernest and I will meet, you know, if we need to, or get other folks involved if it's something that needs more immediate action. But again, you know, my first course of action with something like that is going to be, you know, what can we try to address this behavior now that just the faculty's intervention hasn't worked? You know, now that, you know, we need to get involved, is there something that we can do? Perhaps that student's not registered with Ernest's office and we can provide that as a suggestion, or, you know, whatever the case might be. You know, my first reaction is not going to be, let's pull the student out of the class. Let's see if we can do something about it. If that doesn't work, then yeah, if we have to go as far as doing something like suspending the student, again, it's not something that we like to do, but it is a potential outcome if it's something that's so egregiously disruptive that the class can't go on. But we're going to try and exhaust, you know, other options before we go that route.
This is a different situation. You need to leave. And you can say that. But then there's certainly going to be follow-up. That doesn't mean they're kicked out of Brookdale or the course. So anyway, Laura, do you want to say something? And it's already 1 o'clock, guys. So.
Thank you so much. And I think I'm thrilled when Christopher and Ernest are here because they bring so much important information to the table. But we've had this discussion before on campus with them. It's larger than just the students who are having a really serious crisis. And in fact, I think the person you're talking about, this is more long-term, behavioral, that it's not exactly like he's a danger, right? So one of the things that I'm interested in, there's only one note up there about trauma-informed education. We have students with a really wide variety of trauma and behavioral issues that are being brought to the table, not just the ones who had crisis. We do a diagnostic essay in the English department, and as you mentioned before, there are a lot of English professors here. I'm increasingly seeing a huge percentage of students, based on the prompts we've been giving them, talking about suicide in their family, talking about their own threatened suicides of the past, their mental illness, self-disclosed anxiety, depression, economic insecurity in their families, violent episodes that they've seen or experienced. And there are these quiet stressors that are coming to the table that we don't fully know what to do about, and they are not in Christopher or Ernest's realms, and I don't know what we do about that.
Thank you. Laura, I'm glad you brought that up. For the first time in many years, you now have a counselor reassigned to your institute. That person is assigned to your institute, and not only that, they have residence in your institute. So you will be having Ellie Horgan right there available to you. I'm not sure where her office is, so you maybe know where her office is going to be. I don't. Nurses and other health science, you know I'm there with you. I'm in your institute office. This is exactly the reason we're there. STEM people, unfortunately, you don't have a separate individual. You're stuck with me. So I'm right downstairs. But this is why we're here. We're licensed mental health workers. We all have a license to do this job. So please, send them down, bring them down. That 2986 is supposedly the number that you are to call to make an appointment with us. I prefer you just come to me. I'm right there. You don't need to go through advising to get an appointment with me.
Yeah, we're waiting for instructions. Ellie is in humanities. Don Nigro is with Pat Gallo's area. And I know it's 1 o'clock and some of you have to teach at 1:30.
All right, I just had one
Yes.
last thing just to piggyback off of what you said. So it's really not your job to try to solve it for them, but just that. If you're seeing it, identifying it, and referring them to the right people that are trained to handle that. So that's the best thing, knowing your resources, knowing the kids and knowing signs and symptoms and understanding that and getting them the help that they need, making those referrals.
That's all we have time for today. I don't know how long you can linger, but thank you very much for getting the conversation going.